There was a shrimp tail in my jacket pocket. Not a metaphor. An actual shrimp tail. Cold. Limp. Smelled like citrus and betrayal. I found it when I got back to the car, hours after I'd stormed out of that so-called business dinner. And I just sat there, in the parking garage of a Marriott that cost more per night than my monthly car payment, staring at a shrimp tail like it was supposed to explain something. And maybe it did. See, the evening started normal. If you call being emotionally dismembered with a salad fork normal. It was one of those corporate celebrations with scripted laughs, tiny name tags, and background jazz that makes you want to commit quiet crimes. I wasn't supposed to be there. Trina insisted. Said it would look good if I showed up. For who? Her coworkers? Her boss? Or for him? Let me paint you the scene. I'm sitting at a table where the water has lemon in it by default, which I hate, trying to cut into a chicken breast that looked more like a fashion statement than food. And across from me is a man named Blake. His hairline was suspiciously perfect, like a billboard for testosterone. His watch cost more than my annual salary. And the way Trina laughed at his joke, a joke that wasn't even funny, made something inside my chest crack. But I didn't lose it then. I didn't even flinch when she told the woman next to her that Blake was like family. We don't invite family to Aruba alone, Trina. No. The moment that broke me came later, over dessert. She had leaned in slightly, twirling her wine glass, doing that thing where her voice drops half an octave like she's whispering secrets that don't involve me. And then, right there, loud enough for half the table to hear, she said, honestly, if I had met Blake before I settled. That was it. That one word. Settled. Like I was a couch. A meal plan. A career compromise. The room went silent. Someone coughed. Blake smirked. And I stood up. I didn't say a word. I didn't look back. I left my wallet on the table, my pride under the chair, and apparently, a shrimp tail in my pocket. Don't ask how. I have no answers. Just questions. Too many of them. I didn't drive home. I didn't even drive anywhere. I just sat in the parking garage with that shrimp tail pressed against my thigh like some cursed souvenir from the last night. I thought I understood my life. The engine was off, but my mind wouldn't stop. Over and over, like some busted record on loop. If I had met Blake before I settled. Settled? Like what? I'm the human equivalent of leftover furniture. Something you compromise with until the real thing comes along. I wanted to call someone. My brother, maybe. But he always said Trina was too polished to be real. My mom. She loved Trina. Always said she was the daughter she never had. Ironic, considering Trina looked her in the eyes just 3 weeks ago and promised to help her plant tulips this spring. I wonder if Blake's the tulip type. No, he's probably more of a yacht and dental veneers guy. So instead of calling anyone, I opened the glove box, found a half-melted granola bar, and ate it like I was surviving the apocalypse. That's when I realized I didn't have my phone. I must have left it on the table. A panic rose in my throat, followed immediately by shame. I didn't want it back. Let her keep it. Let her text her precious Blake from my contact list while she figures out how to explain this to HR. And that's when it hit me. She's not going to explain anything to anyone. Because this wasn't some slip. This wasn't a bad joke. No, this was planned. Calculated. Soft-launched, like some twisted brand rollout. Here's my new guy, everyone. Oh, and here's my current husband, Dennis, still breathing, tragically. I finally started the engine. Drove around the block 4 times, not sure where I was going, until I saw the gas station with the flickering sign. I pulled in, parked at pump 6, and just sat there. That's when I saw the first text pop up on the car's dash screen. Bluetooth still connected. It was from her. Trina, you didn't have to be dramatic. Dramatic, right? Because standing up and quietly leaving a room where your wife just emotionally euthanized your entire marriage is apparently theatrical behavior. I didn't respond. 2 minutes later, another one. Trina, you're making it weird. Not she made it weird. I did. I leaned my head against the steering wheel and just laughed. Not a normal laugh. The kind that sounds like crying at first, then turns into something sharp and breathless. It echoed inside the car like a ghost finally found a voice. I looked around. No one was watching. The cashier was inside, scrolling her phone. A man in a beanie was pumping gas and yawning. The world was still turning. And I was still Dennis, the husband who brought a shrimp tail home in his pocket instead of his dignity. And somewhere back in that restaurant, Trina was probably laughing, sipping overpriced wine, and calling it a win. But I wasn't going to be the punchline anymore. Not after what I was about to do next. I didn't go to a hotel. I didn't go to a friend's place. I drove to the school I teach at, the place I've always considered safe, routine mine. It was after midnight when I pulled into the staff parking lot, the kind of hour where even regrets start getting tired. I killed the engine and just sat there, staring up at the dark windows of my math classroom like they could somehow give me an answer. Maybe solve for X, where X equals the exact moment my wife stopped being my wife. I eventually let myself in. I still had the keys. No alarm. They'd shut it off last summer when budget cuts hit. I walked down those dark hallways with their faded inspirational posters, my footsteps echoing louder than my thoughts, which is saying something. I passed my classroom, but I didn't go in. Instead, I kept walking until I reached the music room, the one place Trina had never been. She always hated the sound of kids learning instruments. Said it grated on her teeth. I sat at the old upright piano in the corner and rested my fingers on the dusty keys. I don't know how to play. Never learned. But I tapped a few notes anyway, low and clumsy, until one stuck. A single key that rang out sharp and sour and honest. And in that echo, something cracked in me. Because I remembered something. A week before the dinner, just 7 days, I came home early. Parent-teacher conferences were canceled due to a district power outage. I didn't call or text her. I thought I'd surprise her. Bring dinner, maybe. Be the spontaneous husband I hadn't been in a while. When I opened the front door, everything was normal. Candle burning. Her laptop open on the couch. A bowl of popcorn on the table. The TV was playing some muted documentary about architecture. Trina wasn't in the room, but I could hear her upstairs. She was laughing, not in a cute, watching TikTok way. No, it was a breathless kind of laugh. Nervous. Then silence. Then a quick shuffle of footsteps. By the time I made it to the stairs, she was coming down in a robe, smiling like nothing had happened. "Didn't know you were coming home," she said, kissing me on the cheek like she hadn't just hit mute on something. I didn't think much of it then. Now, I'm pretty sure Blake was upstairs. Or had just left. Or had never even left in the first place. Back in the music room, I hit that same piano key again, the sour one. Harder this time. Let it vibrate through my bones. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. But all I could do was whisper the same sentence over and over like it would undo something. She called me a settlement. I stayed there until dawn. And when the sun started bleeding through the windows, something in me shifted. Not clarity, not yet, but something colder, sharper, less pathetic. I pulled out my wallet. Inside was the only thing I hadn't burned in my brain yet. The business card Trina had given me the night she joined her firm. The one with her boss's number scrawled on the back. In case of emergencies. I flipped it over and stared at that number like it was a detonator. Because maybe this was an emergency. And maybe I was done being quiet. By 7:12 a.m. I was in the parking lot of her office building, sitting in my car with the engine off, watching suits walk in with coffee cups and blank faces. It was early, but not suspiciously early. These people worked like their jobs were intravenous. Trina used to say, "Marketing never sleeps," which always sounded like a threat more than a slogan. I watched the glass doors open and close like the slow blinking of something soulless. Her boss, Erica, showed up at 7:43, hair slicked back, sunglasses on, Bluetooth in her ear, barking into the void. I knew it was her the second I saw the red stilettos. Trina used to call her a badass. I used to think that meant ruthless. Now I hoped it meant something closer to dangerous. I waited 10 more minutes. Then I dialed the number on the back of the card. She picked up immediately. "Erica James." I swallowed. "Hi, this is Dennis, Trina's husband." There was a pause, not long, but enough to feel like a loaded chamber clicking into place. "Oh," she said slowly. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "Not really. Now listen, I didn't plan some masterful takedown. I didn't even know what I was trying to accomplish. Revenge? Closure? To hear someone else say it out loud, that what she did was insane. Maybe. All I knew was that if I didn't tell someone what happened, I was going to explode. So I told her. Not the full sob story. Just the bullet points. The comment at dinner. The texts. The laugh I wasn't supposed to hear upstairs. I told her everything in a calm, exhausted voice like I was reading the weather. Erica didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was silence. For a second, I thought the line had dropped. Then she said, "She mentioned you two were having issues. She told you that." Not directly, just in the way people do when they're prepping a narrative. Lately she's been vague, rewriting timelines, highlighting her independence, that kind of thing. I could feel my fingers trembling on the steering wheel. She's seeing someone, isn't she? I asked, though it wasn't a question anymore. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say, Erica said carefully. But what I can say is that your wife has been making some ethically questionable decisions. And not just in her personal life. I blinked. What does that mean? She's been passing off private contacts as firm clients, setting up side deals. Blake is involved. Of course he is. I need to know if this is official, she added. Because if it is, we may need to start distancing the company before her behavior implicates anyone else. That snapped something in me. I wasn't just a wounded husband anymore. I was the guy holding a match to a dry forest. I'll text you everything, I said. Screenshots, timestamps, names. Good, Erica replied. And Dennis. Yeah? I don't usually get involved in this kind of thing, but I believe you. That broke me harder than I expected, because up until that point, no one had believed me. Not even me. I was just some overreacting, emotional wreck clinging to a shrimp tail like a lifeline. But now, there was a witness, an ally, and maybe, just maybe, a way out. I hung up. I exhaled. And then I made the second call. Not to a lawyer. To my school. I told them I was taking a few days off. I didn't give a reason. I didn't need to. Because what I was about to do next wasn't going to fit inside anyone's HR manual. Not theirs. Not hers. Not mine. I hadn't eaten in over 30 hours when I parked outside the house we still technically shared. My stomach had gone past hunger. It was just a hollow thing now, like a forgotten voicemail. You know it's there, but you don't want to check it. The sun was high, glaring off the hood of her car in the driveway like it was mocking me. I sat behind the wheel for a full 20 minutes, watching the curtains, wondering if Blake was in there. Or worse, if she was alone, humming to herself like none of this had happened. It was strange. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was clinical, like a guy in a lab coat studying his own breakdown through glass. I went inside using my key. The moment the door clicked behind me, it hit me how weird that felt, using my own key. Like I needed permission to enter the place I helped pay for. The place where I'd fixed the broken tiles in the bathroom. Where I taught Trina how to make chili from scratch, even though she always just dumped in cinnamon and said it was her twist. She wasn't downstairs, but everything smelled like her. Vanilla lotion and overpriced hair products. Her heels were lined up by the door, too perfect. Her coat hung neatly on the rack, just slightly brushing against mine. I stared at the way they touched, two pieces of fabric still pretending they belonged together. I went upstairs. Bedroom, empty. Bathroom, damp towels, mirror fogged slightly, lipstick tube uncapped. Office, door ajar. Her laptop was open, screen glowing. And I know how this sounds, but I stepped in, sat down, moved the mouse. No password. God, the arrogance. The browser was still open. Email tab, recent messages. And there it was. An email from Blake Davenport, subject line, missing you already, winking face. I clicked it. That was brutal last night. You okay? I know he stormed out, but honestly, you warned me he was sensitive. You don't owe him an explanation. He'll calm down eventually. Let me know when we can talk. I miss your hands. B. I didn't even breathe. There were more emails. Some sent weeks ago. One with an Airbnb confirmation for 2 in Michigan. Another with attached photos, a lake view, a fireplace, her in a red sweater I'd never seen before. Then a draft. Half-written. Unsent. To me. Dennis, I know I've hurt you, but I hope in time you'll see that we were heading in different directions for a long time. I didn't plan for any of this to happen. You deserve someone who's excited about the life you want. I'm sorry I couldn't be that person. I stopped reading. Not because it hurt. I was past that. I stopped because I realized something terrifying. She was about to leave. Not in 6 months. Not after some messy divorce mediation. She was planning to disappear, probably before the end of the week. Maybe sooner. That's why she didn't chase me when I left the dinner. That's why she hadn't called again. She was waiting for me to just dissolve. To quietly vanish like some error she'd correct in post. But I wasn't gone. Not yet. And not without taking something back. I copied every email. Every photo. Every draft. I sent them to myself, encrypted, backed them up on a USB, and, I'll admit it, I printed them too. 16 pages. ink smeared and curled at the corners. Proof. Tangible, legal, emotional proof. Then I stood there, in the middle of her home office, looking around at the awards on the shelf and the fake plant she always said made her feel creative. And for the first time since the dinner, I smiled, because I knew what she valued most in this world. Her image, her brand, her carefully constructed, glass-smooth life. And now I had a hammer. I didn't burn the house down. I want you to know that. It crossed my mind, not in the literal sense, but the emotional one. That urge to just scorch the earth, leave nothing untouched, nothing sacred. Instead, I cleaned. No, seriously, I cleaned. I don't know if it was rage or some pathetic form of grieving, but I spent the next 3 hours in a trance, scrubbing the kitchen counters, wiping the bathroom mirror, folding laundry that wasn't mine. I even alphabetized our spice rack, like that would somehow restore order to the imploding chaos of my marriage. Somewhere between the paprika and the rosemary, I realized I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for me. Because soon, everything in this house, this life, would no longer be mine. And I wanted it to look spotless when I walked out. Not for closure. For control. Just once, I wanted to leave on my terms. When I was done, I showered, changed into a clean shirt, and stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. I looked like a man giving a eulogy for something still breathing. Then I grabbed the printed emails, the USB, and my car keys, and drove. Not to her office. Not to a lawyer. To Blake's. You see, Trina never knew this, but I remembered the name of Blake's consulting firm from one of her earlier brag sessions. Something about him, restructuring digital ecosystems, whatever the hell that means. And I'd done some digging. Turns out, he worked in a building downtown with one of those corporate names that sounds like a pharmaceutical company, and a dating app had a baby. I walked into the lobby like I belonged there. No hesitation. No fake name. Just walked up to the front desk and said, I have documents for Blake Davenport, personal delivery only. The receptionist didn't even blink. She picked up the phone, said a few words, then pointed me toward the elevators. The whole ride up, I rehearsed a speech in my head. Something scathing, maybe sarcastic. I imagined his face, smug, dismissive, and pictured myself dismantling him in 4 brutal sentences or less. But when the elevator doors opened, and I stepped into the bright, sterile hallway of the 22nd floor, none of that happened. Instead, I saw him through a glass conference room wall, seated at a long table, surrounded by coworkers, talking animatedly with his hands. And I froze, because for the first time, I didn't see a villain. I saw a mirror. A man wrapped in his own ego, too stupid or too entitled to realize the damage he was doing. He wasn't evil. He was ordinary. And that made it worse. Because if Trina could do this with him, she could have done it with anyone. Still, I walked in. His eyes met mine, and I saw it. The flicker of recognition, then discomfort, then guilt he was too late to mask. Dennis, he said, standing up like we were old college buddies. I'm not here for a conversation, I said quietly, pulling the envelope from my coat pocket. Just wanted to return something that belongs to both of you. I placed it on the table. A few heads turned. Curious glances. One guy raised an eyebrow like it was gossip hour. Blake looked down at the envelope. He knew. He knew exactly what was inside. I turned to leave. No dramatic pause. No threats. Just walked away, down the hall, back into the elevator. But as the doors were closing, I caught a glimpse of him tearing it open with shaking fingers. And then, silence. Elevator music never sounded so sweet. When I got back in the car, I didn't feel victorious. But I felt something close to clarity. I hadn't humiliated her. I hadn't gone public or posted the emails online or sent them to her family. I'd delivered them to the one person who, if he had a shred of decency left, would now have to sit across from her in some glossy office and ask, what the hell is this? Let her lie. Let her spin. Let her drown in her own script. I was done playing the loyal idiot. But I wasn't done entirely. Because as I sat there with the engine running, the sun slicing across the dashboard, my phone buzzed. A new number. No name. Just one message. You went too far. I stared at the screen. Then I laughed. Because it wasn't from Trina. It was from her boss. I stared at the message for a full minute, trying to make sense of it. You went too far. It wasn't from Trina. I triple-checked. It was a new number. No contact photo, no ID, just 5 words, punctuated like a warning. I thought maybe it was Erica, her boss, following up. Maybe the fallout was already beginning. But no, I had Erica's number saved, and this wasn't it. I felt a chill run down my spine in the kind of way you only feel when something shifts and you don't know how yet. Before I could type a reply, a second message came through. They're talking legal. You should come in. I sat there, in the parking lot of Blake's office building, the engine still idling, heart racing, not from fear, but from something worse, uncertainty. I didn't know what I'd started. I thought I was holding a grenade, but it turns out I might have been sitting on a landmine this whole time. 10 minutes later, I was in Erica's office, seated across from her at a long table surrounded by people who all looked like they had advanced degrees in damage control. There were laptops open, notepads out, one guy in a suit who didn't blink once during the entire meeting. I didn't even get offered water. That's when I knew this wasn't a conversation. It was containment. Erica leaned forward, her fingers laced, nails like daggers. Dennis, I want to make it clear that I sympathize with your situation. Truly. But what you did today at Davenport and Fraser was reckless. It was personal, I said. He's not just some coworker. I know exactly who he is, she interrupted. Which is why this is an issue. I frowned. Why? What aren't you telling me? The man in the suit finally spoke. Blake Davenport isn't just a consultant. He's a silent investor in our firm. And what you just handed him could be viewed as blackmail. My blood turned cold. What? I breathed. I didn't ask for anything. I gave him the truth. You gave him evidence, Dennis, Erica said, voice low. And whether or not you meant to, you put us in a legal gray zone. Davenport could claim reputational damage, emotional harassment, confidential client exposure. He could pull his funding. He could sue. I felt the walls closing in. I didn't threaten anyone, I said. I didn't even speak to him for more than 10 seconds. It doesn't matter, the suit replied. The implication is there. You walked into his corporate headquarters with documentation of an affair and business impropriety. The timing? Right after our merger. That's a very bad look. And what about what they did to me? I said, heat rising in my voice now. What about my wife trashing our marriage in front of half your staff? What about the emails? What about lying to your face for months while she screwed your investor behind your back? Erica didn't flinch. You think I don't know? You think I haven't had my suspicions? But unlike you, Dennis, I don't have the luxury of flipping tables when I feel personally betrayed. I'm trying to keep this company from collapsing under a scandal. If Trina goes down, she'll drag everyone with her. So protect her, then, I said bitterly. That's what this is? No, she said quietly. This is me warning you. Because whether you realize it or not, you're in this now. You started something that can't be undone. Blake's furious, Trina's panicking, and the board is already on edge. You may think this is about your marriage, but it's not anymore. You touched something bigger. And if you're not careful, you'll get crushed by it. I sat back, stunned. Not angry, not scared, just stunned. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about heartbreak and started becoming something colder. I hadn't exposed a cheater. I'd kicked open a door I wasn't supposed to know existed. I stood up. Then maybe you should clean house, I said. Because if she burns everything down, I'm not standing in the ashes with her. Erica didn't stop me. No one did. But as I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed again. New message. From Trina. What did you do? Just 4 words. But they were shaking with something I hadn't seen from her in years. Fear. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure anymore whether I was still trying to fix something broken or make sure it stayed broken forever. I didn't reply to her message. Not right away. Not even that night. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't reacting, I was choosing. And what I chose, in that moment, was silence. Not the passive kind. Not the kind that waits for someone to fix what's broken. This was a final silence. The kind that rebuilds itself in the quiet. Instead of going home, I drove 3 hours north to a town I'd only seen once on a field trip. No plan. No GPS. Just instinct and a full tank of gas. I booked a room in a small lakeside and run by an older couple who offered me fresh coffee and didn't ask questions. I slept for 16 hours straight. When I woke up, I didn't reach for my phone. I walked to the dock, barefoot, coffee in hand, and just breathed. It was the first time in months I felt like the world wasn't collapsing inward. And I started writing. Not to Trina. To myself. I wrote about the house. The shrimp tail. The piano key in the music room. The scent of her perfume in our bedsheets and the weight of pretending everything was okay. I wrote it all out, not for revenge, not for closure, but because I wanted to understand how I got so far away from myself that I didn't even realize I was lost. It took 3 days. On the 4th, I turned my phone back on. There were 37 unread messages. Trina, Erica, Blake, my mom, my boss, one from a lawyer's office, another from someone I didn't recognize asking if I'd like to share my side of the story for a potential podcast. I read none of them. Instead, I opened a blank message, typed out 5 words. I want the house sold. That's it. No drama, no emotion, just a quiet signal that I was done. Done holding on to what we built for the sake of memory. Done fighting for something that had been hollowed out long before I noticed. 2 weeks later, I found a new apartment. Small, quiet, near the school. My students didn't ask why I'd been gone. They just handed me algebra problems and told me they missed my corny jokes. That was enough. I started cooking again. Not for 2, just for me. And for once, that didn't feel sad. It felt free. I picked up old habits I dropped. Playing chess online. Late-night walks. I started tutoring again on weekends, not for the money, but because it made me feel useful. And slowly, the noise faded. Trina and I finalized the separation through email. No court battle. No name calling. I don't know if she stayed with Blake, and honestly, I don't care. The war ended the moment I stopped showing up to fight. A month after I moved, I got a handwritten note in the mail. No return address. Just one sentence. You deserved more than what I was capable of giving. There was no signature, but I knew the handwriting. I read it once. Then I fed it to the fireplace, quietly. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just smiled, small, tired, but real. Because in the end, I walked out of that dinner without my wife. But I finally walked back to myself. And for the first time in years, that was enough.